Hello friends, how are you? Hope you are doing well. So today we are going to start certain questions related to the climate change, their questions and answers. So the first question is about what is the global warming? So global warming is nothing but it's referring to the increase in the average global temperature since the industrial revolution. So the average global temperature which has increased by about 1 degree Celsius, or we can say 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and since 1880. So global warming is an ongoing process, and now scientists are expecting that the average global temperature to rise an additional 0. 0.3 to 0.7 degrees Celsius through 2035. And we can say that either 0.54 to 1.26 degree Fahrenheit through 2035. Next question is about what causes global warming. What are the causes for global warming? So to understand this, we can understand first about the greenhouse gas effect. So the greenhouse gas effect is a natural process in which the atmospheric gases are trapping the sun's heat and warming the earth's surface and the lower atmosphere, and this makes the earth hospitable for life. So we can think about the human activities such as burning fossil fuels for transportation and electricity generation are increasing the concentration of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So this is enhancing the greenhouse gas effect and trapping extra heat in the earth's atmosphere, and that's how slowly warming the planet. So certain gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, which is trapping the sun's heat in the earth's atmosphere. So these GHGs or greenhouse gases exist naturally in the atmosphere and help keep the earth's surface warm enough to sustain the life actually. And without these greenhouse gases, the average temperature on earth would be 0 degree Fahrenheit, since we can say instead of today is roughly 58.3 degree Fahrenheit. So human activities, notably the burning of fossil fuels like coal, natural gas and oil to power the vehicles, factories, homes, releasing carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So other activities like including deforestation, cutting down the trees and raising livestock, also emitting the greenhouse gases, and higher concentration of these greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which will lead to the trapping more heat on the earth and causing an anthropogenic or human caused or human induced rise in the global temperature. So climate scientists agree that human activity is the main driver behind the global warming which we are experiencing now. Next question is about what is the climate change and is it differing from the global warming? So we can think about the term climate change and global warming are often used interchangeably, and we can say, but climate change broadly refers to the persistent changes in the average weather conditions, like we can say temperature, precipitation, humidity, wind, atmospheric pressure, ocean temperatures, while global warming narrowly refers to a rise in the Earth's global temperature or average global temperature. So we can say climate change can refer to the natural fluctuations in the Earth's average temperature throughout geological time and between cold periods, like we can think about the glacial periods, and warm periods like interglacial periods. So the climate change we are currently experiencing, however, is caused by the human activities. So we can go to the next question now. This is about what is the climate change impact. So the rise in average global temperature because of the human activities can have many impacts or has led to many impacts on the planet, including more intense and frequent droughts and storms, melting glaciers, ice sheets, rising sea levels, warming oceans, ocean acidification. So people around the world have already felt that the impact of the climate change on the environment. So changing weather patterns can ruin the crops and cause serious water shortages. Rising sea levels are threatening the low-lying islands and the coastal areas where we can see tropical and insect-borne diseases are spreading as their hosts move into new habitats that are previously too cold for them to survive. So we can think about now climate change represents a significant threat to the health and well-being of the communities and the human societies, especially we can say that lack of resources and are therefore ill-equipped to the dealing with the effects of a warmer climate. Next question is about what does the global warming have to do with severe weather conditions like storms, heat waves, droughts, and hurricanes? So, a rise in global temperature increases the severity and likelihood of the storms, floods, wildfires, droughts, heat waves. So, in a warmer climate, the atmosphere can collect, retain, and drop more water, leading to the changing precipitation patterns as well. Increasing precipitation can help support the agriculture, but precipitation is increasingly coming in the form of more intense single day storms, which damage the property, infrastructure, and lead to the loss of life in impacted areas. So we can see certain global warming related other issues. Global warming also results in warmer sea surface temperature because the majority of the heat trapped in the earth's atmosphere is absorbed by the ocean. So warmer sea surface temperature make it easier for hurricanes to be formed. Hurricanes are forming because of this, and because of the human caused global warming, it is expected that the rainfall rates from hurricanes will increase, and the intensity of hurricanes will also increase, and the proportion of storms level will also increase. So it is difficult for the scientists and researchers to attribute a specific weather event in global warming. So climate scientists are confident that higher average global temperature are making extreme weather more likely and severe now. So next question is about what does global warming have to do with the rising sea level actually. So we can say that the global warming contributing to rising sea levels in two main ways. First, we are talking about the warmer temperatures causing glaciers and land-based ice sheets to rapidly melt, and which will move water from land to the ocean. And areas experiencing significant ice melt include Greenland and the Antarctic and mountain glaciers around the world. So second, we are talking about thermal expansion, where the process by which warmer water takes up more space, and that's how it is causing the ocean to increase in the volume, and which lead to the rising sea level. So other factors which are affecting the sea levels, and that is the combination of all these factors leads to different rates of sea level rise across the planet. So local factors that can cause the sea level to rise faster in certain areas include ocean currents and sinking ground surfaces actually. So this rising sea level can lead to the coastal flooding and endanger millions of people living in low-lying coastal areas actually. Next question is about what is ocean acidification. So ocean is a central component of the carbon cycle, where carbon constantly cycles between the ocean, land, and atmosphere, and it's called as carbon flux actually. So seawater absorbs 20 to 25 to 30% of carbon dioxide emissions. As human introduced or introduce more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, the ocean is absorbing a greater volume of the carbon dioxide. So this changes the ocean's chemical composition and is referred to ocean acidification. Ocean acidification, where the pH value of ocean has decreased by 0.1 pH units, and which is about a 30% increase in the acidity. So the change in enough to affect many marine organisms. For example, acidification stunts shellfish shell formation and can even also cause shells to dissolve also. Next question is about what does production of food products have to do with the climate change actually. So we can think about livestock contribute to the climate change both directly through their digestive process and indirectly because of the vegetation that is clear to make the room for animal agriculture. So agriculture as a whole is responsible for the greenhouse gas emissions. We can think about the livestock such as cows, sheep, and goats, manure left on the pastures, and synthetic fertilizers, rice cultivations, burning to clear land, and soil or crop residue management also can lead to the certain type of emissions actually for greenhouse gases. So livestock specifically, and especially when we talk about the cattle producing methane through their digestions, and manure also emits the methane actually. So forests have often been cut down or burned to obtain land for livestock production, and which will release the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and destroying a natural carbon absorber. And economic development and population growth are leading to greater meat and dairy consumption worldwide, making livestock a rising contributor to the climate change. So there are ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from livestock operations, including capturing methane from manure and changing animal feeding practices. So this will lead to certain reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions actually. Next question is about what does the climate change have to do with the health actually. So rising global temperature exacerbate heat related diseases such as heat exhaustion, heat strokes, as well as we can say cardiovascular, respiratory and kidney related diseases. So next is about climate change, which is also impacting foodborne, which impacts the foodborne diseases because higher temperature can increase the abundance and range of many pathogens as well as their growth rates and survivability actually. So water availability and waterborne diseases or illnesses are also impacted by the climate change, and regions where we depend on snow melt for drinking water may have less available water since less snow is accumulating during the winter. So increased flooding caused by extreme weather events can intensify the waterborne diseases by providing standing water that acts as a breeding ground for the insects actually. So changes in climate will also affect the disease vectors like such as insects, snails, and other cold-blooded animals, and that can live by extending or shifting their ranges and the length of the transmission seasons actually. So the next question is about how does the climate change affect the food supply. So by increasing the frequency and intensity of droughts, floods and storms, and climate change can impact the farmers ability to grow crops actually, and thus the infrastructure necessary to transport and store food supplies as well. So changes in seasonal weather patterns that farmers are accustomed to also make it more difficult for them to plan their plantings and harvest. And warming ocean temperature are causing range shifts for fish and shellfish species, which in turn impacts the fisheries as well. So though plants need carbon dioxide to grow, higher levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere are not necessarily beneficial for agriculture. So researchers have found that higher level of carbon dioxide result in crops with lower nutritional values actually. Next question is about what is a carbon footprint and how can I reduce my carbon footprints actually. So a carbon footprint is the amount of carbon emitted by the actions of a person as an individual, group, household, organizations or activities over a given time period actually. So primarily due to the consumption of fossil fuels, which is leading again to the carbon footprint, the emission of carbon. And the more fossil fuels are consumed during any activity, the larger the carbon footprint will be. So for an example, flying results in a larger carbon footprint than taking a train to cover the same distance. So activities that are part of the natural carbon cycle such as breathing are not counted in this. A carbon footprint can also include emissions of other greenhouse gas such as methane, in which case their contribution is usually calculated based on their carbon equivalents actually. So reducing or offsetting greenhouse gas emissions by improving the energy efficiency, using renewable energy, moving to energy transition and adopting sustainable practices is the best way to reduce one's carbon footprint. So simply thinking about like the things we can take examples of the public transportation using lighting which is emitting diode like LED. We can talk about light emitting diodes, LED light bulbs, and reducing food waste are just a few of the many ways or examples of reducing the carbon footprint and to fight the climate change. So we can think about now the next question: what are the renewable energy sources for energy now? Now, renewable sources of energy come from natural resources like sunlight, biomass, geothermal activities, water, wind. Okay, and so the common source of renewable energy are solar, wind, geothermal, hydropower, as well as certain forms of biomass. So renewable technologies like wind turbines and solar panels have become increasingly competitive in the energy market nowadays as their production costs continue to fall. And we can say that renewable energy is also a low or zero carbon source of energy actually. So increasing global investment in renewable energy technologies have been acknowledged by the overwhelming majority of the climate change experts and world leaders to be an essential strategy for reducing greenhouse gas emissions actually. Next question is about what is the energy efficiency. Energy efficiency means using less energy to perform the same task or activity or eliminating the energy wastage. And energy efficiency brings a variety of benefits like reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, reducing demand for energy imports, and lowering the cost of on a household or economy wide level actually. So improving energy efficiency is the cheapest and often the most immediate way to reduce the use of fossil fuels. So there are enormous opportunities for energy efficiency, or we can say efficiency improvements in every sector of the economy, where it is buildings, transportation, energy generation, or any other industry. Next question is about what is the climate change adaptation. So adaptation means adjusting to the current and expected impacts of the climate change. So it can apply to habitats but also to the societies, communities, and economies also. Adaptation usually involves preparations for harmful effects like which are arising from rising sea levels and more frequent and intense extreme weather events. But it can also prepare communities to benefit from the climate change opportunities. So examples of climate adaptations include changing crop planting and harvesting patterns to align with a new climatic zone, moving homes away from a coastline or putting those homes on stilts actually, and planting trees in the cities to decrease intense heat made worse by the urban heat island effects actually. So natural based solution or nature based solutions are an important form of climate adaptation. Example for nature based solution include the tree example above, and green roofs, where the roofs are absorbing the storm water and reducing the temperature, and living shorelines that can absorb storm surge during extreme weather events. Next question is about what is the climate change mitigation. So mitigation means reducing or stabilizing the level of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. This can be done by removing the carbon dioxide or carbon from the atmosphere, for example by expanding forest lands or by emitting fewer greenhouse gases. So these can be examples of climate change mitigation. Next question is about what is the climate change resilience. So climate change resilience, or resilience, is the ability of a system to absorb, withstand, and bounce back, or we can say recover after an adverse event. So in the environmental context, it is the collection of policies, procedures, infrastructure, services, transportation, energy systems, planning that positions the communities to prepare for and to respond to the impacts of the climate change. So communities that plan with resilience in mind are better able to adapt and thrive in the face of a changing climate actually. So for the communities that are most vulnerable to the climate impacts, planning for resilience can prevent displacement or facilitating the planned relocation and reducing the devastating financial losses and the fatalities also. Next question is about what are the businesses doing to combat the climate change actually. So the investors, the companies across the globe are embracing the shift from fossil fuels to cleaner energy. So they are following the principles of the energy transitions. So many large companies or organizations or corporations have all stepped up to show their public support for carbon cutting efforts and have invested in the projects combating the climate change actually. So the companies have signed certain treaties or letters that endorse the Paris Agreement on the climate change actually. So next question is about what is the United Nations doing to combat the climate change. So United Nations has been instrumental in facilitating the international negotiations on the efforts to combat the climate change through United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change UNFCCC and the Intergovernmental Panel on the Climate Change IPCC. So UNFCCC brings together 197 members, including all the United Nations member states, for work sessions throughout the year, and during the annual conference of the parties COP Nations share the information on emissions, policies, practices, attempts to develop the strategies for addressing the climate change. And IPCC consults experts to assess the climate change science and presents the policy relevant information outlining how the countries or the nations can mitigate greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impact, the risk, and its global threat actually. And United Nations adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Those are meant to serve as a blueprint for the actions on the critical development issues such as ending poverty and hunger. Goal number 13 is climate action, which calls on the nations to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and to prepare their communities for impacts of the climate change actually. So the need to address climate change is also woven throughout other goals as well. Next question is what is the climate finance? So climate finance is a kind of investment of public, private money into the programs, actions and projects which is aiming to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and increasing the resilience to climate impacts. So different entities exist at international level, national level, local level. They are to facilitate and the mobilize the deployment of the climate finance. So for example, government environmental facility and green climate funds are two major climate finance vehicles at the international level, and the green banks and infrastructure authorities play a similar role in the United States also, you can think about as an example. So that's how we complete all the questionnaires. I hope you like it. We'll continue our discussion for the next topic. Thank you very much, friends. Thank you.